Church of Canada. But I do want to share with you some of the key things that we heard from those communities of faith that participated in those conversations. We heard strongly that the church has changed. We heard that the church is opening, welcoming, and justice-seeking. We heard a need for the sharing of our denominational identity, to be able to share that identity more clearly and publicly. We heard about a significant number of faith communities that are growing by imagining new ways of being in the world. As Jacob reminded us this afternoon, we truly are an alive church. And we did hear this through the Community of Faith consultation process. I want to commend to you a great video by the Edge Network that actually highlights some of those places of vibrancy and energy and life in the church, in communities across the country. And you can find those at edge-ucc.ca/stories. We also heard that governance needs to be simpler and more effective. Communities of faith want autonomy and also connection and access to support. We heard that technology is central, but help and support are needed. All of these things that we heard that I'm sharing with you have been echoed in conversations that I've heard here just in the past day with you. We heard that ministers want continuing education and a supportive and collegial community. And so we moved on to a next stage of engagement with presbyteries across the country. In February of 2014, the Comprehensive Review Task Group shared Fishing on the Other Side, a discussion paper that suggests a vision for the church and some very preliminary structural concepts. These are ideas that are intended to stimulate discussion and faithful, discerned feedback. Now, this is a really exciting part of this time together when I get to tell you that we are delighted that just as of this week, all of our church's 86 presbyteries and equivalent bodies have already discussed the paper or have plans to discuss it before the end of June. This is amazing. Our church has engaged this opportunity to be in faithful discussion. And again, I'm going to invite you to stand up because I don't want any of us to get too comfortable. Stand up if you participated in one of those presbytery consultations. Wow. I heard from someone today who told me that they actually participated in multiple presbytery conversations. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of the presbytery leaders who so ably facilitated these conversations. I know a number of you are in this room, and you took on significant roles in making this process happen to the point where we can say that every presbytery or equivalent body across the country has had a chance to participate. So thank you so much. These discussions are still ongoing, and we look forward to hearing the full results of them. We are also excited to be receiving input and letters from various groups and networks in the church. We want to hear from people who aren't just connected at the presbytery level, but who are invested in the church in many other places and bodies, and who feel invested in this work to engage the document and to share feedback. So that continues to happen as well. I'm going to leave the discussion of these preliminary concepts to the presbytery conversations that many of you have already had and not go into too much depth of what was discussed in Fishing tonight. But I do want to review the concepts really briefly just to provide a foundation for our conversation here. So a few of the concepts from Fishing include A shift from denominational institutionalism to community connection and networking. And this is language that was shared with us by Lillian Roberts and Tricia Elliott from Ottawa Presbytery. We also heard that there's a desire to support, inspire, and equip people to participate in, really fully participate in, God's vision of a changed world through strong and vibrant communities of faith. There is a desire for the church to articulate a strong denominational voice, and we heard this over and over again. And ultimately, we need to be sustainable. We also heard a longing to spend more time and more resources on mission and ministry, to replace oversight and rules with service and support. We are also journeying with the Aboriginal Ministries Council, as I mentioned earlier, as they discern principles, processes, and structures that affirm the future of ministry in their contexts. And together we are walking that path at the speed that it takes to encourage us all to live into right relations. Go back. This is a diagram that might be familiar to some of you, a circle model from the fishing discussion paper, a series of concentric circles with vibrant communities of faith at the core, as well as an elected denominational council. This circle envisions networks supported by denominational staff locally, located centrally and in regions, as well as a college of ministers and an association of ministers. And we asked presbyteries to talk about 4 discrete areas of this discussion paper, areas that we felt presbyteries had specific insight and expertise into. And those areas are property, oversight of communities of faith, oversight of ministers, and connectional space, that space in the regions that holds us together. Now, as I mentioned, we are still collecting and hearing from presbyteries and equivalent bodies across the country, but I want to share with you tonight a few of the early responses that we have heard. Overall response has been more positive than negative. We've heard a strong desire for more details. We want to see this fleshed out a little more. We have also heard a desire for implementation to happen over time, and a longing to more clearly understand the theological groundings of these and any concepts. We have heard a resounding call that property is a resource of the whole body, and that support and expertise in terms of property issues are deeply and desperately needed. In terms of oversight of communities of faith, we have heard that communities may not anticipate the needs. And so there's been concern over a perceived sense of congregationalism. And we have heard this in many places. Concern that promise of support might be empty in a model like this and not adequately resourced. And there's a need for resources. And then in terms of oversight of ministers, the college concept in fishing has been the most positively received concept. Recognition of professionalism and human resources expertise that might come from this or any such of a body. And a need to reflect regional context, though, in some sort of a denominational or national body. In terms of the association, there has been strong support for the collegiality that might be expressed through such a body. There has been concern, though, that an association might reflect something too secular that might not echo who we really are as a church. And response seems to be split on who should pay. In terms of the connectional space, we have heard excitement around questions of space for new ideas and questions of how this could be resourced. Lots of questions around resourcing. We have identified some interesting generational trends as well in terms of the connectional space. We've heard from a number of youth and young adult communities that seem to find the concept of a connectional space really exciting, while some of other generations long for more structure. And we've heard lots in between as well. Kathy Hamilton, who is the chair of the task group, meets with the executive of the General Council at its biannual meetings. On May 3rd, just a few weeks ago, Kathy met with the executive and discussed the following concepts or areas, other areas that haven't already shown up in discussion papers like fishing or what we will discuss tonight. So Kathy, with the executive, spent quite a bit of time talking about vision, about membership, and about governance. In terms of vision, Kathy shared with us a few comments from the table groups. The word that came up most in that discussion of vision was united. An image of a broad river with banks was shared. An image of a big tent. As well, the vision of our identity as outspoken. A diverse community of followers of Jesus in our community as seekers and as servers was really clearly articulated. And the task group continues to find inspiration in the new creed, and particularly in an adaptation of the last line, "You are not alone. Thanks be to God." In terms of membership, the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee has a working group that is looking specifically at ideas and concepts related to membership in our denomination. And they continue to explore how the structure of membership in the United Church can be changed to better reflect realities of radical hospitality within the accepted bounds of our ecumenical partnerships. And we continue to work with that group and to be in dialogue with them as they explore the concept of membership, and to chat about this with other areas of the church, such as the executive. And then in terms of governance, at that meeting on May 3rd, Kathy heard some concern about how to build trust within the body of our church. There was great respect for our conciliar system in which the Spirit guides those gathered to decide through discernment and through prayer. This is foundational to our identity. And there was a strong desire to continue having a moderator as the public face of the church. In spite of a desire for a small and nimble structure, there is still a call for all voices to be present and heard at the table. And then there's United Future. A number of you have come up to me over the course of today and said, I think I know you. You look really familiar. And then we've realized it's through those United Future discussion forums. So many of you haven't maybe met me in person, but have seen my face on your computer screen. Another one of our many engagement tools is United Future. I wonder, have any of you signed up for United Future? Some hands. You've been receiving emails from me. Some of you may have participated in a live discussion forum. You may have watched our Called to Change video. You may have even started a discussion forum, or a discussion thread rather, on one of the pages of United Future. United Future is an online forum where you and anyone in conversation across the church shares hopes, fears, dreams, and vision for this United Church of ours. This is an online platform that was started by the Comprehensive Review Task Group as an alternate route to be in discussion and dialogue, a place to invite us to reimagine our church for the future, and a place to invite some of the voices that might not be represented already in our church's current structure and system to be part of that conversation. If you haven't already signed up, I would encourage you to do so. This conversation continues to evolve organically and to fill out, and you'll have a chance to find videos, live discussion forums, and opportunities to share your thoughts. We are listening, and we are receiving summaries of all of the discussions that happen on United Future. We receive weekly summaries of everything that comes in through that platform. And we're also planning a way to reflect what we're hearing and address common questions and to reflect that back to the community for a depth of discussion and dialogue. And we're also always looking for ways to improve the site and the content. So please don't hesitate to share your thoughts. If you haven't already checked out United Future, I would encourage you to do so. Sign up, watch a video, start a discussion thread, RSVP for our next live discussion, which is happening on June 12th. And that will be a chance to ask a few of us from the Comprehensive Review Task Group any questions you might have. And then engagement with conferences. Another key part of our engagement is with you, with leaders in your conference. Even as we prepared fishing on the other side, there are large areas that we recognized we left untouched. So we developed a new set of discussion material to address some of these key areas that had previously been identified as gaps. Things like funding a new model, like the relationship of communities of faith within the denomination, areas of social justice and regional mission and ministry. And that's the conversation that we will begin today. So before this meeting, we shared a new package of discussion materials entitled Trust God, Trust the Body. I know that some of you have had a chance to see this material already, maybe just briefly over dinner even. Some of you might not yet have had a chance to check it out. Tonight is intended to be a spark in that conversation, a chance to start talking about these 4 areas. These are areas that we believe you have particular expertise and insight, and we want to hear from you. So we are going to start that conversation and we'll let it evolve from here. A platform like United Future might be a good place to continue some of that conversation. Like fishing, this package asks some real and some hard questions. We don't have the answers yet. If you see gaps or if you have questions, we encourage you to suggest your own answers. Identify the gaps and then go that next step into suggesting what that might look like. We want your frank and your open feedback on these questions. We want your suggestions and your ideas to improve our concepts. We're also really interested in hearing alternate ways to address the issues that have been raised. We're going to spend some time talking tonight in your table groups. And in a moment, I'll share with you the process that we will use for that. But first, I want to provide a bit of an overview of this material because I know we've all had varied chances to engage with it. You will find one copy of Trust God, Trust the Body on each of your tables. As well, it is available electronically. I notice many of you have tablets or laptops or phones where you can access that. But I'll walk us through a little bit. So electronically to find it, you can find it from the BC Conference homepage. I understand there's a section about this meeting, and there's a link to that document right on that page. Alternately, you can find it on the United Church of Canada main page, so united-church.ca, and on that main page is a link to Comprehensive Review conference discussion paper. I might pause for just a second. I notice many of you trying to take a chance to find it. So as you're doing that, I'm going to talk really briefly about these 4 areas. In terms of funding a new model, the context for this area of discussion is that the cost of the current governance structure of our church beyond congregations is not sustainable. Too much money is being spent on governance and denominational administration and not enough on mission and ministry. And this is something that we have heard already across the church. We've a desire for more transparency and accountability. Denominational administration. Might be funded through an assessment, perhaps. Discussions need to continue with Aboriginal ministries. As well, another principle is that some presbyteries and conferences have significant investments. So these monies should continue to be used to finance activities in those regions. These are just a few principles, and as you talk about this part of this next discussion paper, I'd invite you to wonder together, are these appropriate principles? Do you agree with them, in your view, and what might be missing? In terms of the relationship of communities of faith to the denominational body, our context here is that vital communities of faith are at the core of the church. There's some desire for responsibility and authority to reside closer to communities of faith. And communities of faith are many parts of one body. Relationship is crucial. Relationship with other communities of faith should or could membership of communities of faith in the United Church be defined through covenant? What might that look like? What does that mean? What would be the basis of such covenantal relationships? Would a covenantal relationship maintain accountability of communities of faith and free up time and resources for enhancing vitality? Or perhaps would it do the opposite? In terms of social justice, the context here is that doing justice is a critical part of the United Church. It's in our DNA. Our justice work is rooted in our commitment to dismantle systemic issues of injustice and oppression. And we live out our commitment through our voice, accompaniment, advocacy, service, and prophetic action in the world. And so we're wondering, what criteria should be used for our denomination to speak on? What should be the threshold for approval? And how can we better engage communities of faith with partners? And then the fourth area. Here we go. Thanks to the conference executive secretaries and senior general counsel office staff for suggesting a fourth area for discussion here with you. We want to honor your ministries and understand the vital work that is being done here at BC Conference and at conferences across the country. Many conferences offer regionally specific programming and staff support, support that brings services closer to needs, support that provides locally based services. Some of these are long-standing, while others have been created to address new and emerging needs. Some are similar to ministries that exist in other regions of Canada, and others are brand new, never been seen before. Some examples that we might have of these in BC Conference, we heard about many of them this afternoon during the Pecha Kucha time. Things like youth and young adult ministry, children's ministry. We heard about Naramata Center and First United, about Our Place and ethnic ministries, and many others during that time. These represent some of the regional ministries and some of the regional mission here in BC Conference. And so we're wondering, in a model with transformed middle courts, what can you imagine these ministries accomplishing? And how can these ministries and this mission be accomplished? What kinds of ministries would need to be managed regionally? And how would priorities be set to determine which supports were most needed and where to support activities in a connectional space or regional bodies? So that is a lot. So I'm going to explain the process for how we're going to do this tonight. At each table, you'll have a chance to talk about a few of these areas, not all. We are the body of Christ and the body of this church, and as a result, we all have a vested interest in all of these areas. So we trust the body to discern together and some to discern on our behalf. Tonight, we're going to start by taking time in your table groups to talk about that first part, the section on financing the church. Each table group will have about 15 minutes or so to talk about the financing section, and in the discussion paper, as well as a separate printed copy on your tables, you will notice 6 questions around the financing section. Similar to the phishing responses, we have given you a scale of 1 to 7 and a chance to either strongly disagree, strongly agree, or somewhere in between with the statements that you'll find in these 6 questions. We have heard that as a collective, it can be hard to pinpoint one number to represent a table group or to represent an entire presbytery, for example. So if your table is having a hard time discerning or pinpointing that one number that represents how you're feeling, you can mark down the varied responses from your table. Those of you that have a tablet or a laptop at your table, I would invite you to designate one person who has access to that technology to be your note keeper. And I would ask that person to go online and to go to this link that is printed up here, http://ow.ly/w, capital V, small x, 8. It'll be up there for a while. To go check out that link and fill out your responses as you go along. You will have a chance then at the end of your discussion to submit them electronically in this time and place. Because we value your voice, we want to ensure that we hear from as many of you as possible. If you don't have someone at your table who has access to an electronic source that can help you track your responses, I'd invite you to keep track on your hard copy, and we will be collecting all of those. But those of you that are submitting electronically, I'd ask you to just fill out the name of your note keeper who submitted electronically and their email, so that if we are missing a number of responses, we might have a way to follow up with you. So each table is going to have a chance number 1, then I'm going to some of the other areas circulating, and I'll bring us back together in about